Okay, we'll start with Director Miller. Hey, he's a South County guy. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I'm a South County guy. I also sit on the TCA board, so I've got a couple quick questions. I'm not going to get into the public comment that was made here today. That's all part of a study that needs to be ongoing. But if you would go back to, I believe it was slide 5. I'm sorry, slide 6. My first question is, we have conflict area D, and it's my understanding that OCTA has already done a study down there to extend and expended funds to do this study to extend the HOV lanes down to County Road. Is that correct?
Director Miller, that is correct. Mr. Brock can go through the details, but we began that process, I believe, in 2016, and we have spent about $620,000, $500,000 on a board-approved contract consultant, and about $120,000 was paid to Caltrans for project oversight.
Okay, and so that study, could that be reused as part of the South Orange County Mobility Study in terms of, I believe it's Alternative 23? Could that be reused?
Director Miller, it certainly could. Although, as I mentioned a little bit later in the presentation, there were some new concepts that were introduced that include additional widening that go well beyond that study. So while portions of the study could be reused, if you're going to a dual hot lane in that area, you almost have to start over again. So the single lane alternative, certainly that's reusable, but you'll note that a double lane alternative has been proposed. That is 2 lanes in each direction. So it depends on how those alternatives move forward as part of the notice of preparation, notice of intent process.
Okay, and another question is, when you look at alternative, I believe it's 11 and 12, those are to create toll lanes out on the 5 as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we have already done quite a bit of work out there through the Measure M projects, is that correct?
Director Miller, the project on I-5 is between El Toro and State Route 73. That's a Measure M project. It's in the right-of-way acquisition process right now for a significant number of properties as it relates to the Measure M goal on that project. And essentially the project would extend a portion of the carpool lane, but most of the project's actually general purpose lane widening project down to the vicinity of State Route 73. So most of the project is general purpose lane widening, and then a portion of the project is HOV lane widening.
So we're still going through right-of-way acquisition, correct? Property acquisition on this. Is this not something that we could work with TCA and Caltrans on right now to study what the impact of hot lanes were? My question being is that if this is something that just isn't feasible at this time, we need to eliminate it as a board member from TCA's proposal. So my concern has always been, when I got on this board a year ago, the communication between these two agencies, in my opinion, hasn't been all that great. And we're expending large amounts of taxpayer money in parallel or opposing projects. And when I see an opportunity like this to bring the two agencies together and actually maybe say, it does make sense to do it or it doesn't, that's a concern of why the agencies aren't working well together. And the best part, the easiest part, I think, is Caltrans is the lead agency. That's right, lead agency on the South County Mobility. I always forget it's lead agency and sponsoring agency and whatever. But bring the two agencies together and let's talk about this. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? What are the impacts to Measure M? My big concern are the impacts on Measure M. We made commitments to the taxpayers. We told them what we were going to do. And what I don't want to get into is we've expended those funds and now we have to go back and repurpose them for something else. So Darryl and I've had long conversations about the 405 corridor, and I wasn't here for that one.
Well, maybe if I could, Mr. Chairman, Director Miller, just try to clarify a little bit. There's essentially 6 miles on the I-5 between 73 and the El Toro Y. There are 3 construction segments. One is in construction today. In fact, I drove home from LAX late last night and I saw the big flashing signs about starting tonight. There'll be significant changes to La Paz Road interchange. It's under construction today. It's very obvious that it's under construction. On our behalf, Caltrans opened bids for the second segment about 2 weeks ago, and that will be under construction. All three of these segments are environmentally cleared, are a part of the Measure M program. It's about $581 million. The California Transportation Commission has done the most of the resolutions of necessity through that process. This is one that this board does not do with the Caltrans project per se. It is consistent with Measure M. So working together is maybe a different issue than what we have today versus what is going forward. So this was environmentally cleared 4 to 5 years ago, engineering, design, right-of-way acquisition. It's in construction today. And this process that is starting would sort of lay over that. And I think the published schedule talks about an environmental document complete at the end of 2025. We'll be done with the construction before the environmental document schedule is to be complete. I think the concern is two things. One is it stepping on top of or going into the same space that we have a commitment made to the voters as part of Measure M? If it's beyond that and it's more capacity, maybe that's something we should talk about. But I think most importantly is the recognition of what is approved by the voters and approved by Caltrans and approved by this board in terms of implementation. So we're not saying that we shouldn't coordinate by any means. That's not the point. I think that there is conflict, and that is the concern there. And I think the board, I know you've expressed significant concerns on the 405 project about conversion of an HOV lane to a hot lane. This is the same type of thing. The only thing that's different is this is a Measure M funded HOV lane. The 405 project was a non-Measure M funded HOV lane. So I think those are important distinctions. So we're not suggesting that the future doesn't need a hot lane. I think that's something we should be looking at, and we should be talking about it. But we think that the current activities are perhaps a bit premature, given that we're truly in construction right now today on a project that's been approved through all the proper planning processes.
Thank you. This gets back to something that's been bothering me for years since I became elected between these two agencies. And I don't know what the history is all the way back. But these are discussions I truly believe should be had before these types of projects are even started to be studied. We have Caltrans sitting here. We know what their master plan is, what they're trying to accomplish. And I don't want to say we're pitting agencies against each other, because I truly don't believe we are. But we have agencies that are involved in big construction projects like OCTA are today. And TCA is starting to study that area as well for an additional construction project. I can't really support anything if these two agencies or the three agencies aren't going to start working a little bit more closely together. I mean, this is, to me, you hear San Clemente's upset about this, and they have valid arguments down there. I mean, we have other agencies that are equally as concerned about this. But, you know, when I got here, I had to do some hard work, and I'm going to talk about it now. I know it's our next item, but I spent a year diving into the 24191 connector. I did a very deep dive into that and understanding what's going on. And it came down to trying to get four agencies to work well together. I listened to it before I got on OCTA down at TCA for 4 years, and I heard one side of the story. I didn't hear the other side. I got here and I did hear that side. And I knew that something was wrong. I didn't know what it was. And so I got, you know, my goal, and we achieved it because we're going to vote on it, I hope, next, is that you brought four agencies together with Caltrans, OCTA, RCTC, and TCA trying to solve a problem. And we got them talking together. And with that, we have an agreement that we're about to vote on our next item. It was incredibly important for our county. I don't understand, and it bothers me, why we're going to have the same conflicts in South County. Let's address them now and make sure that we don't end up in those same fights. We had a $5 million EIR hanging out there that may expire, stale. We have to recreate the work, whatever we're going to have to do on that, because our agencies couldn't get along. We got them in a room. We figured out what the real issues were. We got it out on the table, and we came up with a plan. That's incredibly important to me personally, and I think it should be for the county. I think as South County mobility moves forward, and we're talking about being out on the 5 corridor, OCTA has to be at the table for this. They have to be. Measure M is a big issue for our county. Every time I hear we have a Measure M conflict on what we're studying at TCA, that raises red flags for me. Doesn't mean we shouldn't study it. We should, if that's what the state thinks we should be doing. But we need to actually be thinking about our EIRs, competing EIRs. Should we be going on except, you know, opposing each other, or should we come together, create one document, one study that the taxpayer has to pay for one time? So that's my concern. I understand everything that you're saying here. I don't disagree with you on a lot of it, but it's something that I think these agencies need to come together and have a little bit deeper conversation about.
Thank you for those comments, Mr. Johnson.